the Women Changing the World podcast, a podcast on a mission to bring you some of the most amazing women I know who are doing incredible things to generally make the world a better place. From corporate sustainability to straight up magic and everything in between, you'll meet the real life humans who are birthing the new. I'm your host, Liz Best, and I'm here to amplify the stories and voices of women who are changing the world. I am so excited to welcome you to another episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. Today, I sat down with Hannah Wells, who is a sustainability strategist at Ramboll, a catalyst for impact, and clean living consultant. We talked about everything from curiosity quests to bragging and why it's important, and tips and tricks for building more personal and professional relationships in the impact space. I just know you're going to enjoy my conversation with Hannah as much as I did. Welcome to another new episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. I am so thrilled to have Hannah Wells here with me today. Hannah is just a human who I have long appreciated and admired in this space. Gosh, Hannah, I think we first met in real life back at the Assembly, aka the most beautiful co-working space that ever existed, in the brief moment when I was a member and the pandemic had not shut the co-working world down. And it's so fun to think of all the fun that you and I have gotten to have over the past few years. So maybe before we jump in, would love if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself briefly to our listeners.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I'm so thrilled to be here, and it's really fun to have been able to watch your journey as well since that time at the beginning of the pandemic at the Assembly. So I'm Hannah Wells, and I'm based in the Bay Area, and I've been here almost 5 years now, which is wild. And my background's in corporate sustainability. I did my undergrad in sustainability and sociology almost a decade ago now. Well, I think it is a decade ago now, which feels wild, and have been working in-house in corporate sustainability, started in renewable energy, and then kind of did my MBA at Presidio Graduate School and transitioned to the Bay Area and sustainability consulting. And then kind of have dabbled in entrepreneurship and all kinds of other things to kind of explore my passions and interests in connecting people and networking. So I'm a big enthusiast for other women networking groups primarily, but also net impact. So I know we've crossed paths at many events as well. And so always love meeting new people as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, and honestly, I'm sure we met before the Assembly. I think that was maybe our longest first one-on-one conversation, but you are just a master connector. That's definitely something that I want to make sure we dedicate some time to, because I feel of all the women I know who manage to build authentic relationships and stay connected to people in the space, you are someone who does that extraordinarily well.
Well, thank you. I feel very honored to be in your circle and grateful for the people you've connected me to as well.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's a love fest.
For sure.
Well, I know you've listened to the podcast a bit, and so you probably know the first question I want to ask, which is I often start with, this is the Women Changing the World podcast. If you had to pick one thing that you wanted to change about the world, what would be your one thing?
This one is so hard, and I think about it every time you ask it on the podcast, to be honest, because I'm like, what is that one thing? If only it was one thing I would want to change. But of course, women empowerment is super important to me. But if I think about the kind of thing that I'm kind of never dabbled in, but very passionate about. It's about kind of addressing climate change through addressing inequalities in our food supply chain and food waste sector. So if we could address climate change and food insecurity, that would be kind of the one thing I would love to see happen.
Oh my goodness, I love that it's two answers in one, and I feel like there are some really elegant solutions at the intersection of those things that I would love to see deployed at scale. So thank you. That is a surprising answer, and I love it.
Right? Because I haven't worked in food, but climate change is something I'm very much passionate about.
Totally. Well, and I think you haven't worked directly in food yet, so maybe
Yes.
because I know you're doing super interesting consulting work at Ramboll, among the many things that you do. And actually would love to hear, to the extent you're willing to share, like what you are up to in your day to day, in your current career, and what it looks like.
Yeah, so I joined Ramboll. It's an engineering and design consulting firm that's building a brand new strategic sustainability consulting arm out of the Americas. And they've kind of been a global player in the sustainability consulting arena for a long time, based out of the Nordic region. And so it's been pretty exciting to get to start something new and help build and create that. But I joined as a manager to help kind of lead various projects in the strategic sustainability consulting arm. And so I've gotten to work on food waste LCA actually, which was really exciting. And kind of lead that project. And we just wrapped that up. And then another computer hardware circularity project, which was really exciting, looking at kind of the emerging regulatory trends and competitive landscape of kind of what's happening related to end of life in the server and computer hardware space. And then I did another kind of inventory project. So I've kind of led a lot of different climate strategy and materiality assessments as well for my sustainability consulting career. So Ramboll's providing more opportunities for that. And most recently, I've gotten to dive into kind of helping align our team with internal efforts and dive into kind of the implementation plan for Ramboll's science-based targets.
Ah, so cool. I feel like one of the coolest things about doing consulting work is the sheer variety of different things that you can kind of like get your hands in. So thank you for giving us a little like peek behind the curtain of what that looks like right now. I'm curious, you alluded to this at a high level, and I always just love hearing, to the extent that you're willing to like tell us the whole story, how people come to be where they are today. I was just on a call with a potential client yesterday who was saying something about like how some of the podcast guests, she's like, I mean, they just have like these dream jobs, and I'm like, how can I be you? And I'm like, oh, that's so fun, because I feel like that is part of, what I aspire to shine a light on in these conversations, is like, here's what the steps actually look like in real life. And I know that you have had a really interesting trajectory to get to where you are today, so I would love, to the extent that you're willing to share, to hear more about it.
Definitely. I mean, networking and connecting people with people has definitely been part of that journey. Very much kind of being clear on kind of what I wanted and committed to taking action and experimenting along the way to get there. But building relationships has definitely been core to kind of helping me navigate and find those opportunities. And for me, I think it starts back, like I felt like coming out of college, I actually landed my dream job. It took me a long time after an internship that I feel like the best thing I got out of it was a best friend for the last decade. But it was a green marketing consulting role. And it was like a one woman show, and she was not the easiest to work with, but a really great learning opportunity of kind of the landscape of sustainability, green marketing, etc. But it was most of all a good resume builder, because I think it helped me land my first job, which was at a renewable energy company that was a startup at the time that went public while I was part of the company. But that opportunity really came to me because I was open to hearing about opportunities, and it was a network marketing company, coincidentally. And so I went and met someone in a coffee shop to hear about the opportunity. I was like, actually, I want to work at the corporate side, and how am I going to do this? Let's see, who do I need to talk to at the company? How do I get in front of them? So I'll go to another meeting. and just try to introduce myself. And so I think being really proactive in introducing yourself and giving people your vision or your background and your story and what you're passionate about goes a really long way. And so they were at the beginning of their journey hiring for sustainability, and I got to kind of build my career under the VP of marketing to do sustainability coordinator. And it was like spearhead Earth Month, do product market launches and events and all kinds of things that really like leaned into my strengths and were a really fun opportunity that led me to kind of even more corporate sustainability and communications efforts and reporting at the organization. And that kind of also led my career for a little while and kind of exploring communications roles. But I realized I don't love being in that reactionary communications function as much as I love being in the program management and leading initiatives and leading teams. And so after doing my MBA, I very much wanted an opportunity to kind of apply the business skills that I had gained at Presidio, and decided that sustainability consulting would be one avenue, as well as looking at other opportunities. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do consulting, but while I was searching, I again leaned into my network and was introduced to a former colleague at Enthesis now through my mentee at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, because she had gotten her job through Enthesis. And so I joined Enthesis through connecting and networking, and then kind of moved on from there last spring, and then had the Ramboll opportunity come through my LinkedIn and opportunity again. Really excited me about kind of getting in at the beginning of building this sustainability consulting team and organization.
So cool. Well, thank you for sharing. And it's like, I feel like your story is such a testament to the power of connecting and like taking the call and reaching out, and also to the power of LinkedIn. So,
Yeah.
I know that you kind of framed the time in between being at Anthesis and joining Ramboll as a curiosity quest. And actually, I realized that you may have even been on a curiosity quest earlier than that. But for people listening who have not heard of a curiosity quest, can you tell us about what it was and what led you to going on yours?
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of just in a place where I knew I needed to change something, and I needed permission to do that and to just like have that reset and follow. I felt like during my MBA, because I had been in my um, role for a while and I was working full time through most of my MBA, that I really didn't take the time to do a lot of the exploring and discovery that a lot of people go through when they go back to school and do their masters. And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, all these different things have interested you over the years, but you've kind of just like gone where the wind is taking you with your opportunities and paths. And so I started kind of thinking about what could I do from an entrepreneurship perspective, and how could I kind of just lean into some of the topics of sustainability that were foreign to me and of interest. I went on a bit of a journey looking at kelp and joining a sustainability startup weekend with like a clean tech, I forget what group it was with, but just really thinking about what would it be like to be in a completely different arena and looking at addressing climate change through kelp forests, and what the business opportunities would be there. And, I had started kind of dabbling in entrepreneurship through network marketing because it was an industry I was familiar with, and one where you don't need any startup costs really to get started and sharing and promoting products that you already believe in and love using. So I had started kind of working with various products in the microfibers for cleaning, for clean living, and then Beauty Counter. I'd been using the products for 5 years, and so looked at kind of how can I help advocate for better, more proactive legislation and skincare in the industry as well. So spent the summer kind of learning more about entrepreneurship and asking myself questions, but also really learning how to like rest and recover and do self care and be in the like okay of not knowing and trusting that like when the right opportunity comes, um, I'll be ready, but I really need that downtime as well. So it was like kind of a mix of how do I actually just let myself be? And also how do I explore things that are of interest with me for me without burning out? And I would be honest that I think the kelp thing, I took a very like must connect with everyone, be proactive and seek out opportunities. And once I did that, I kind of had less interest as well. Like I was just like, this felt very hustly and
Mhm.
not as aligned. And so it kind of fizzled. My interest fizzled. I think it partly because of the approach I took to that curiosity endeavor.
That's so interesting. I feel like the world of kelp and sustainability is so interesting, and I know a lot of people who are really jazzed on it right now. And also, I think it's so interesting. Like, there are so many women in my world where it's like sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing,
So
or
hard.
yeah, or to rest or take a break. Like I know so many very successful kind of type A women who like it's actually the stopping, the pausing. I mean, I'm the same way, like checking in with our intuition, trusting that the right thing is going to come to us at the right time. Like, that's so much harder than going after what we want if we've spent our whole life like hustling to get what we want. And I just love the self reflection too that you had kind of landed where you had landed without taking the time to sit back and reflect and wanting to take a moment and be really intentional about what came next.
Mm-hmm. And it was so fun working with you too, because I think you asked me a question of like, well, what do you want to, where do you want this next opportunity to take you? When we started kind of working together at the end of the summer, when I was like, okay, I've done my rest bit, I'm ready to start thinking. And it was like, do you still see yourself in corporate, or do you see yourself with more flexibility, and is consulting an opportunity for that? And it was just really interesting to kind of think about like what it was I wanted in 5 years versus like what does it the immediate look like, or what's the path to get to that 5 year flexible plan that I wanted. And so I appreciate you kind of asking those questions too, as I kind of thought about what it is I wanted my day to day to look like in a few years.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I think it can be so helpful and so clarifying to figure out like what is the like medium or long-term day to day, because also it can be kind of liberating because there's like so many different paths you can take to get there. Um and it's a good kind of litmus test for different opportunities of like, is this actually putting me on a path closer to what I want?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, because I'm sure there is someone who will listen to this episode at some point who feels like they're sitting in the unknown. What advice do you have for anyone who maybe has like either called in this space or for whatever reason finds themselves like deep in what is often referred to in manifestation as the magic dark? What like tips or wisdom would you offer?
I think it was helpful for me to have like a timeline in my mind of like how much time I wanted to give myself on this curiosity quest, and also just like name it so that I could explain what I was doing to other people. So I've heard it like referred to as a pause. I named it for myself the curiosity quest, but it was just like that personal self-discovery journey I needed to be able to explain with other people to other people. And I don't know why that was important, but I think having that of like, this is my plan for my nothingness was helpful and permission granting for me. And then in terms of like actually executing on it, I think um, it helps you, right, articulate what it is you want to. So then you have support, getting the support and like understanding of those who are in your life as well. And I think I thought other people would kind of doubt my decision or question it, but everyone was very supportive. And so finding those people who like can help you through it, because it can be hard to be in that unknown. So whether it's working with someone like you, Liz, that's like, checking in of like, are you doing are you really taking care of yourself? Are you pausing? Or, are you getting back into this like hustle mode or fear mode or whatnot? Or if it's a like close friend or partner, but really getting that support and community to help you through it.
Have you been meaning to expand the circle of amazing women in your network, but it's been hard to find the time to connect consistently? Are you a member of a small team creating a big impact and you wish you had additional brains to tap to think strategically about what's next? Are you craving personal growth, community, and magic in your personal and professional life, but feeling like you don't know where to find it? Imagine if you had dedicated time and space to build relationships with other badass women in impact. Imagine if you had access to a brain trust of rock stars who are ready to help you solve any challenge, personal or professional. Imagine if you had an extended team of like minded women cheering you on, hyping you up, opening doors, and helping you make your wildest dreams come true. Imagine if you took the time to really invest in yourself and be intentional about the impact you are here to make. The Girls Club Mastermind is a 5-month mastermind for women who are changing the world. It is an intimate community of powerful women who are dedicated to lifting each other up. They are your hype women, your cheerleaders, and your extended team. The next round of the Girls Club Mastermind kicks off in April, and you don't want to miss it. Head to elizabethbest.com/girlsclub. That's ELISABETHBEST.com/girlsclub to learn more and apply today. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I mean, I think so often we like have this like fear, and it's funny. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about this, and then I also just read something about it in Jamie Varen's new book. Like we have this idea of like the they that's gonna judge us, but then often like when
Oh
we
yeah, we are.
actually do the thing, like the people around us are like, "That's amazing. I celebrate you," and you're like, who was the they that I was
Hmm.
so worried about? I still haven't tracked down the they, but I just love that you like trusted yourself and took that time. And I know that one of your practices that I so admire has been like writing letters to yourself. I know that you've like in that time too, you also did a lot to like put your desires on paper. I know we've gotten to vision board together to like bring things to life. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about some of those practices and like where they came from and how they might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's, like you said, there's a number of different ways that I feel like I've done it from putting my ideas on paper. And I would say I've not been someone who's done that consistently in my life, but I think starting back in 2018 on my personal development journey, it was kind of, I needed structure in order to sometimes get there, in terms of encouraging myself to document what it is I wanted or slow down and process what it was I wanted. But one of those things I know we've talked about before was like, I had done the Tony Robbins um, Date with Destiny, and one of the things then that I wrote down was like to lead with vulnerability and compassion. But also, one of the things I was really focused on in 2020 was finding love and relationship and partnership, and just like being really explicit about what it was I was looking for in a partner. And then I also started looking, when I started looking for a new job, I wrote myself a card before I got a job saying, congratulations on getting this role, and what you bring to it, and just like kind of continuously kind of celebrating before the thing had arrived, but also getting very clear on what it was that I wanted. And so mostly journaling, but the vision board or just like various kind of workshops or exercises to get clear have been really helpful as well.
Totally. Well, it's been incredible to watch. I mean, I feel like in I know 2020 your focus was love and meeting a partner, which you did. In 2021, I believe you were really focused on health and feeling
Mhm.
good. And then 2022 was really about the job, and it's been so cool even in the pandemic to watch those things unfold for you.
Yeah, very much spot on. I think 2021 was this like, you can't keep going at the rate you're going. Your body's telling you to slow down and pause. That was definitely part of the curiosity quest as well. Was like that I really could see that my body was signaling that I needed change, with back pain, and I'm still dealing with it, but in such a better place now, having done that work and I think, I still listen to affirmations about my body is healing and I'm healing, and taking, I do feel like affirmations have been a big way also that I've not necessarily, you know, wrote things to fruition, but kind of practiced more of that manifestation energy through affirmations, and just like at putting my attention somewhere, right? And I think the more we can be clear on what it is we're striving for, and recognizing, like, I know you've done the wheel of life exercise with many clients as well, and in your workshops, but really thinking about, like, if you have to pick one or two of those that like really are the areas you want to focus on, that can be really helpful, and giving yourself permission to not necessarily have to tackle all of them at once. But it's been really fun to see each of those areas definitely gain more clarity and progress as I focused on them.
Absolutely. One, and yeah, I mean, I think for anyone listening who's not familiar with the Wheel of Life, the idea is that you find, you do kind of an inventory and determine if you were only going to change one area of your life, like what's the area that would have the greatest impact across the board. Because I think so often when we feel overwhelmed in particular, which is my favorite flavor of suffering, that it feels like it's everything, but often it really is, like as you said, like the one or two things that can really shift things. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I would love to talk more about your intention that you set, and I just like loved the reflection that back in, I think you said 2018, you had like written out like, I want to be a more vulnerable leader, or lead with vulnerability and compassion. And I also know that that's something that you've like recently had kind of reflected back to you, that people really admire your vulnerability. I'm one of those people, very much so. But I'm curious, like how you went about and like embodying and owning all of your strengths. And I will share too. I know for me, recognizing that vulnerability was important to me was like one of the first steps in becoming vulnerable. I don't know if that's true for you too.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think I didn't know it was missing for a long time for myself. Like, I just had that way of operating without it. And I think when I saw, and maybe I did have it in some way, in some areas of my life, but it wasn't something I felt like I consistently did in all areas. So if you think about, like, professionally, in friendship versus in relationships. And I feel like it was like in the relationship piece, I felt like I wasn't being vulnerable often and letting people in to be supporting me or asking for what I wanted or needed in a relationship. And so that was like a clear focus, but also with like work, I had kind of gone through much of my career hiding the fact that I've been dyslexic my whole life, and trying to not have that be something anyone knows because I saw it as a weakness. And yeah, like it's just been something I've really worked to kind of embrace over the last few years. Probably with no longer feeling like I'm a newbie in my professional career, and feeling like it's okay to own all parts of me. And I remember distinctly when I stepped into a communications director role, it was really hard for me because people were like, "But you're not a writer, and like you don't have a communications background." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm really strategic when it comes to communications, and I can edit from a content perspective of like the hierarchy of information, and from a leadership perspective, that makes a lot of sense." But I had to then be vulnerable with my team and say, I'm dyslexic, so this is like where I'm going to lean on you from like the grammar and the writing perspective, and changing that kind of taking bringing that vulnerability to the group and team was it just like a complete game changer for me, because it then gave me permission to just be more of myself. And I think that was now like 4 or 5 years ago. It was during my MBA program as well. And even then it was like only let a few people who selectively have to know. And more recently, I've kind of owned it in my career, in my job, and said, this is my strength. This is, a superpower I have, but it also means these are things that I'm not that great at. And it was really empowering to kind of reflect on that and do more learning over the summer in my curiosity quest of what it meant to be a dyslexic adult versus the child I knew myself as, having a hard time learning to read, etc. And so I actually owned it in my interview process. I, went to an offsite where I met my entire team and I spoke very proudly and boldly about that being my strength because everyone's like, oh, you've got a communications background. Let's have you start writing content. And I'm like, that's maybe not what I want to be doing because I'm your version of, communications is maybe not what I envision myself contributing to the team most strongly with. And so it's just been really interesting to kind of think about really owning my strengths, being vulnerable where I know that something is a superpower, but it also can mean that there's things I'm not as good at as a result. But it's been in my relationship also super powerful to like lead vulnerably of like things that I'm maybe insecure about or things that I really want help on, and finding someone that could match me with that was really important to me, and make me feel comfortable doing that. So
Oh, definitely. Definitely. When you show up with that vulnerability and that authenticity, as you know, you're giving everyone around you permission to do the same. And I felt like that was such a gift that you brought to the Girls Club Mastermind, which I am so grateful for. And I would be remiss if we did not also talk about the other massive gift that you brought to the Girls Club Mastermind, which was the introduction of bragging to the group, which I honestly think was just such a transformational piece of the experience. It was so much fun to brag with and like hear the brags of these like totally amazing badass women. I think it just like the reclaiming of that word and the reclaiming of that practice is so cool. And I would love, love, love to hear how you first connected with bragging, and then how you put it into practice.
yeah, it was definitely like the perfect complement to the girls club. When you think about like the old boys club, there was plenty of bragging there, but not in such a powerful way in which we kind of embraced it as girls club. So I was introduced to bragging through my sister, who's also in the coaching world, who was introduced through Mama Gina, who's the author of a book called Pussy. And she's all about just kind of women's empowerment and reclamation of some of these things that have kind of made women feel small throughout their lives. And so, the concept is really that women downplay their accomplishments over and over to kind of fit in. But I feel like it's totally the patriarchy that has then reinforced this like concept of us playing small, feeling small, so that we didn't step into our power. Because I think when we think about it, the exercise is just really it really helps you like process your own accomplishments so that you feel capable of moving forward and taking action as well, to kind of embrace what you have done, what you bring to the table, what you can celebrate, what you want to be recognized for. And so oftentimes you're bragging. It's not like you're just bragging to yourself, though I do brag to myself a lot in my journal.
Yay.
But it's in community is really kind of I feel like where the magic happens. And so it was really special to kind of host a clean wine tasting and like celebration with many, many toasts. And what we did is kind of go around in circle and community, and kind of brag with obviously such incredible women who definitely felt a little uncomfortable at first bragging, and had to warm up to it. And so I feel like each round got juicier and juicier when it came to the brags, and realizing it's not just like the you know accomplish the checkbox that like society tells you that you should be bragging about. It's like the checkbox of like, I got up today and I did X, Y, and Z, or I worked out, and it's celebrating all those little things that we don't give ourselves credit for. So it was really fun to kind of just see other people like warm up to this idea and then embrace it. And then hopefully I think it's, carried on beyond girls club as well. And it's, definitely something I just like love to bring to various people in my life.
Yes, well, I know like some people have brought it to their teams as a way of starting team meetings, which is so cool. And yeah, I mean, I like even I remember at one point you had to kind of intervene early in our bragging practice of like, it is important to say the words, I brag that. Yes. Even that, I think initially you felt a little uncomfortable to be like, okay, here we go. Um, but yeah, just to watch like the power in owning that. And in bragging again, as you said, for like the little things, for the big things, and to truly experience being celebrated for it. When I think for
Hmm.
so many women, like that's been seen as like an icky thing and not a thing that we would be celebrated for, for the vast majority of our lives and careers.
Yeah, I feel like that was the magic of doing it in the girls' club, is just like to see how other people are actually energized by you bragging too, right? Like it's a contagious feeling of like good energy, right? So I think it was just kind of like, ooh, like they're bragging about this, let me brag about this. And like, I want to brag about this. There's so much in my life that's so good, and worthy of celebrating. And then to feel like everyone is genuinely happy for you. Because I think that's the other thing that as women we carry around thinking like, people like like with this pause or break that you take, right? Like people might not be happy for you, but it's like we, for some reason, have just felt like as women, others aren't going to be happy for us when we're happy. And so, just like seeing that reaction, I think also carries a lot of weight for women.
Totally. No, you're so spot on. I think it's like something in our nervous system that has to get rewired of like having the experience of doing this uncomfortable thing and then being celebrated for it and being appreciated for it. It's like yeah, I just don't think there's anything quite like that like physical experience in our bodies of like to make it feel safe to do.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, thank you. I am so grateful forever. And I definitely feel like bragging is going to be a centerpiece of a lot of things moving forward, just because, again, it was so powerful and such a generous gift to the experience. And then I know we alluded to this earlier. I'm changing topics a little bit, but one thing that I brag for you, as I already noted, is that you are just such a master connector. And I know you alluded to the fact that it, was really helpful in your job search in the past. But I would love if you feel comfortable getting into like any kind of specific tips and tricks for people who are listening who I feel like building more in a lot of ways, building more relationships in the impact space has never been easier because people, well, who knows, things are changing so fast, but people are home. You can kind of reach anyone on Zoom in a way that I feel like we were a lot less open to pre-pandemic. On the other hand, we're all zoomed out and people
Hmm.
are starting to resume daily, like face-to-face interaction increasingly. Um, so you can lean into like the digital side of this or the IRL side of this, however you see fit. But what recommendations do you have for people who are kind of hungering for more connection to build more relationships and they're like really maybe in their heads about it and not sure where to start?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's definitely changed a bit in the pandemic because I leveraged networking groups a lot in real life prior to the pandemic of going to events, and I feel like so honored that like so many of the women in my life and friends in my life that I created here in the Bay Area all came out of going to these events as well. So some of my best friends I met at a women in CSR event or Women in Clean Tech or a Presidio alumni event. But I really appreciate going to events where you get those opportunities to kind of have the networking breaks, but more so like the workshopy things or the follow up afterwards. But I think some of the keys is like just getting yourself out there, and then sometimes it could be helpful if it feels hard is to get a friend to go with you, and then doing a follow up afterwards of just like recognizing that the impact someone might have had in meeting them, and then kind of the follow up is definitely something I sometimes do well and sometimes I definitely don't, and I think we all go through those phases. But I think that's where the magic is when someone circles back and tells you like the impact that you had after a networking call or a connection that you make, helped make them make, or something like that. It's always nice to hear that. But I think also the the opportunity to just make it personal. Like I've never really um enjoyed going to networking events where it's not like with like-minded people. So it's a little bit harder to like say like, oh, go, go to the, it's like find the people that you already have something in common with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes easier to then bridge the conversation, both like personal and work. And I think at some of these events, it's like when we talk about the real life stuff that I'm interested in, that's where the friendship builds from just like being transactional worky related. So it's like finding that personal connection, whether it's a love for travel or a love for food or, your common, dating challenges. Like I feel like that's where some of these conversations that like change the relationships from being like transactional to like, let's continue to the conversation after this networky kind of thing has really created meaningful, lasting relationships. And I think in the busy of life, it can be hard to say yes to people that are like completely out of the blue. So like when you're reaching out to someone, I've reached out to plenty of people just randomly on LinkedIn, but find the common thread, right? Again, similar to like that relationship piece of like, is there a common connection that you have? Is there a way that when you finish one conversation with someone, you just ask them to introduce you to someone else? Or is there someone who's connected to someone on LinkedIn that you want to be introduced to? Because I find that often is like the game changer. Is like if someone comes to me, if Liz was like, I need you, I think you would be great connecting with this person, that personal interaction of like makes me that much more inclined to prioritize the time to do it. And so I think that that goes a long way, or finding something that that person has written online, or doing that extra work. I've definitely gotten job interviews based on the fact that I just like traced down a blog and then related it to them on LinkedIn. So those would be my tips. It's like do the extra homework and step that a lot of people skip. Especially like the just adding a note if you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn goes so far.
There were a few things in there that I would love to underline. I think opening with like anything you have in common is like I think automatically going to make someone so much more likely to respond to you. And
Hmm.
it's so random, but just showing, as you said, like that you've done your homework, whether it's someone in common or some like very random and obscure like club that you were both in undergrad, or I mean, the list could go
Yeah,
on. Um, and then I think being a real person, and like showing up in spaces where it's safe to be a real person, but also where you have common interests with other people. And then the one that I really want to emphasize is that like the follow up is a game changer because follow up is what distinguishes like a one off conversation at a conference from a relationship. And I've, met plenty of people over the course of my career. And oh my gosh, I wish I could go back and like shake my younger self for not following up on some conversations. Um, but yeah, I mean, the difference of like, feeling like someone and like you want to like go to bat for them or vouch for them or make introductions for them. Often it's really just like one or two follow up emails that makes such a world of difference.
it really does. And I would also say give yourself permission to follow up with those people like 5 years out, 6 months out, 3 months out. Like no one else is counting the time. They're just like, maybe won't remember it as well. But like if you had some level of connection with someone at any time, I think you can always revisit it. Like I was carrying guilt recently for not responding to someone who reached out to connect that I've known for years, right? And she just followed up again, and I was like, you know what? I really respect that. Like she didn't let me off the hook just because I didn't respond, right? Or like she didn't no longer want to talk to me just because I didn't respond, even because we all got busy, right? And she just continued to like say I'd still love to connect, and then like let it be. So that would be my
Yes,
other tip is the follow can happen even if someone hasn't responded to you the first time.
yes, it so can. And I do think that we can get in our heads of like, oh my God, it's been 2 years. Like, should I? And the answer is like, sure, go for it. Like, the worst that
Yeah.
could happen is they don't respond and you're exactly where you are right now. and you might have still totally made their day, and it was just a busy day where they didn't have time to get back to you.
Totally.
Well, I love that, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on that front. I would love to hear. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. I was actually just thinking about it earlier this afternoon. If you could give some advice to your younger self, and you can pick an age, or it can be like generic younger self advice, what advice do you think younger Hannah would most benefit from hearing?
I think, I mean, maybe I got this advice before, but I was thinking about this as well. And like, I think adulting is hard. And I wish someone had told me to just like really enjoy my youth more and like recognize that I had my whole life to work and create impact and that like it didn't have to happen overnight. um, because I feel like that, like, I think it's capitalism in part responsible for this, but like this hustle of my 20s was very, I feel like, toxic. But even in high school, I wanted to have a job and like work and check off accomplishments. I did my associate's degree in high school. One for more freedom, but also I was like, oh, I can get 2 years of college done in high school. Like I just constantly wanted to grow up faster, and I feel like I just wish someone had said like, just enjoy your youth and like embrace where you are now, because like it's not, you don't have to do it all overnight.
That is such good advice, and I can't remember if I was just sharing this in real life or if I shared this in a recent podcast conversation. But I someone reached out to me not too long ago who just graduated and locked in a full time job doing like exactly what she wants to be doing this fall, and she's thinking about what to do this spring and summer to like really get like an edge on this full-time job in the fall. And I was like, "I'm so sorry. I can't help you. Like, I'm going to tell you what I think, but it's not what you want to hear." And what I think is like, go travel, do nothing, enjoy the next 6 months. It's all going to be fine. Someone did tell me to do that in between transitioning from an internship to full-time in my first corporate job, and I took 3 weeks, and I look back and I'm like, you moron, like, you shouldn't
Yeah, totally.
I thought they needed me, like, no one needed me that urgently. I should have taken the summer. Like, I think it's so hard to see when we're in it often, and I'm with you. I think, like, capitalism, I'm sure, has a lot to do with it, um, but I think that's such a powerful reminder that, like, there is time. There's no rush. You don't get a prize for getting there first, wherever there is.
Yep. Right. And I think the we sometimes forget just how nourishing the rest can be, the travel can be, and like that being the powerful thing that actually prepares you most for what you need next, right? Like if you don't take that time to repower almost, to shut down in order to repower, then you're kind of, you're not able to bring your full self if you're not coming from a place of rest as well.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like no matter how cool your first job is, and yes, there are some very cool like first real jobs, but like nothing when you're like in your 30s and 40s is gonna seem as cool as like the summer you backpacked around Guatemala, or like decided to be a ski instructor, or like in the winter, or like the random
100%.
things that you do in your early that I honestly didn't do as much as I feel like I should have, but like those are stories you'll have forever. And there really is like
Such character building too, right? Like it gives you just something
totally,
unique
it's like
to.
it's life perspective, it's character building, and it's so once in a lifetime. I mean, they say youth is wasted on the young. But I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And taking it in the other direction from past to future. What are you most looking forward to right now?
I am just really excited about the momentum in the field right now. Like it feels like everyone is looking for ways to get involved in an industry. I remember people being like, "What are you doing taking your career in this direction? You're never going to have successful career. Like, this is a passion, not a career. And so I'm just really excited and looking forward to all of the opportunities that are coming from the increased interest, demand, and urgency of the state of the world right now.
Yes, it finally, in this moment, in spite of all the horrible things happening in the world, it like does feel like more than ever before we're all like rowing in the same direction. Maybe not all of us, but more of us than ever before in human history. Okay, well, you know this question is coming. I am a sucker for an inspirational post-it note and have way too many on my desk right now. One day we will get decks printed with all of the inspirational messages from the guests on this podcast. And I'm curious, what would you want to put on your inspirational post-it?
I would say that right now I'm working on letting it be easy. So let it be
Mm,
easy would be what I would add to my post-it. Like, don't overcomplicate it.
uh, yes, I'm such an advocate for letting it be easy. It can be hard to let it be easy.
It is. It's very hard.
Hannah, well, this has been such a treat. As you know, I can talk to you for hours, and I fully intend to. but, but just so appreciate you making time to come on the podcast. It's been so fun, and you're so brilliant and wise. And for people who are listening and want more Hannah, where is the best spot for people to find you, follow you, keep in touch with you?
Yeah, people are welcome to follow me on Instagram at Hanny the Greenie, Hannie, the Greenie, um, or reach out on LinkedIn and add a note to your comment that you listen to the podcast, and I will be happy to respond and connect with you.
Ah, amazing. Putting your advice into action. I love it.
Yes.
And we'll be sure to link to both of those in the show notes. But thank you again so much, Hannah, for making time. This has been like such a delight. I'm such a huge fan of yours and so appreciate your sharing all your thoughts and knowledge on the podcast.
Such an honor to be here, and I'm going to go brag that I was on your podcast now. I was a woman changing the world.
Yes! Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Women Changing the World podcast. Please rate and review the Women Changing the World podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is liz.best, that's lis.best, or you can find me on LinkedIn by searching my name, Liz Best. Join my mail list by visiting elizabethbest.com/monthly meditation, and you'll receive all the latest updates on events, retreats, and opportunities to work with me, plus a monthly love note from my heart to your inbox. I am so excited to keep in touch, and I'll see you in the next episode.